So the other day I stumbled upon my edition of Zenith and a wave of memories hit me. From the book signing to reading it to watching all the rant reviews. And a question hit me. Was Zenith as bad as people made it out to be? So that's what we're going to be doing today. I've reread Zenith after 4 years, and we're going to be analyzing the drama, the tea, to ultimately see if Zenith deserved all the negative press that it got.
And that's what you missed on Glee.
Yep, that's me. Thank you. Hello, beautiful bookish people. Today I'm taking you back to 2016 when Zenith was published. What I just want to do is take a step back from the drama without capitalized T and analyze if it was in fact that bad. But before we do that, I feel like I need to give you a little history on Zenith because what I've learned in my adult life is that context is key. Okay, from my research, which just means watching old Sasha's videos. I don't think Zenith was supposed to be a full-blown book, at least the version that we have here, because, let me explain. What I mean by this is after some research, again, watching Sasha's old videos, it seems to me like Zenith was supposed to be a fun project between Sasha and Lindsay after Lindsay got rejected for a publishing project. This meant that she asked Sasha to do a writing project with her, which meant a short little ebook that you probably know has the same name, Zenith.
Ow, I hit my finger.
That I think was about 50 pages or so when it came out. Now, when you think about it, a lot of the complaints about Zenith are about structural issues within the first 70 to 100 pages, which makes sense when you understand that it is in the context of it was originally a 50-page ebook. It explains the info dumping. It explains pausing the story to let you know all about the character's backstory. And it explains the kind of a little bit shaky world building. Because at that point, they're only working with 50 pages, so it makes sense that all that stuff is at the beginning. Because they were kind of only working with 50 pages. What I think was supposed to happen is this ebook seems like it was a way for Sasha to get her foot in the door with an already pre-established author. Almost building her resume, if you will, hopefully enabling her to publish books in the future. Now, what ultimately happened is that Sasha has a huge audience, and when Zenith was released, jumped to the top of the ebook book sale. Publishers took notice, eventually signing with Harley Quinn, which ultimately made them finish the book within 6 weeks. Let me repeat that. 6 weeks. I can't even write a poem in 6 weeks, let alone a book. Now, of course, Sasha was not the first booktuber to publish a book, but she was by far the biggest at this time, documenting her progress along the way, creating more and more excitement, releasing it to the public, and I think you know what happens next.
The book is terrible. Truly hate this character. All in all, I think I may have DNF'd this book because reading it made my brain hurt.
The more you go through it, the more it becomes annoying.
The plot came out a total dumpster fire.
It got to the point where people were giving the sequel 1 star before it had even come out. And which, by the way, don't do that. That's so disrespectful, so unabashedly selfish to like authors, publishing, and all that. It's just so rude. Don't review bomb books. I don't care if you hated Zenith, don't review bomb. Small booktube exploded with rant reviews, and big booktube kind of seemed to stay quiet, increasing the tension within the community. Almost like this big versus small mentality, causing the reputation of Zenith to go down the drain, because if you hear from reviews that a book is trash or terrible, of course you're gonna go into it with more critical eyes. I myself fell into the virtual groupthink, and I feel really bad about it upon rereading because, y'all, it's not that bad. But before we do that, I feel like I need to give you a summary. Insert stock image summary here. Go! Most know Andromeda as the Bloody Baroness, a powerful mercenary who reigns terror, who stretches across the galaxy to those aboard her glass starship. However, to her teammates, she's just Andy. Until one day, her ship gets captured by none other than her ex-boyfriend. Dun, dun, dun! where the overlord of both of them tells them that they need to go on one more mission for them to be free. So I feel like the big question here is Zenith bad? And no, it's not as bad as people were making it out to be. Well, my thing is it has some really cool ideas, but just falls flat in execution. For example, it has some pretty major structural issues. It introduces all 7 main characters within the first 50 pages, but not only introduces them, but gives you their entire backstory, which makes it ultimately hard to connect with them because you don't really care about them yet. So when every character seems like a walking cliche after another, I can see why readers might be put off. But the thing is about cliches is that they're cliches for a reason. It's a tested and tried device that works. Like A Darker Shade of Magic is filled with cliches and tropes, but it's able to tackle them in a new and interesting way. The Chosen One trope is still around because it works. Lord of the Rings is not original. In fact, it got its core concept from an 1800 opera by Richard Wagner. Insert part of the ring cycle right here. Shakespeare stole almost all of his ideas, but his execution is what makes him brilliant. I think what's frustrating about Zenith is that all the core concepts are there that you need to tell a good story. It just didn't put all the pieces together. Like you got a puzzle at a garage sale and just 5 pieces are missing. It's so frustrating. Like I think the character development that Andy goes through is actually really interesting. It's just bogged down with like a weird mixture of writing styles that I don't think connect with each other. I don't know which is which, but there's this one like flowery prose type of writing style, and there's almost this other one that's very clinical and to the point. So when you try to mix like almost Laini Taylor-esque modern poetry with like Sanderson straight to the point writing style, I don't know, the crossover just didn't fit. And overall, Zenith is not the best, but it's fun. And that's it. That's the tea, which looking back at it is not that big of a deal. There was so much discourse around an almost just subpar sci-fi novel. I think the common misconception I saw about Zenith is that, oh, Sasha is a professional reviewer, therefore she should be a good writer. And to that I say, no. They're two separate entities. Like, I'm sure your reading taste has changed since you were 12, and I'm sure your writing has changed since you were 12. They're both skills that you need to work on. Just because I'm a good painter does not mean that I'm a good sculptor, you know? Yes, they fall under the same branch, but they're two separate things. Which leads me into the review portion of this video, where I would like to debunk the common misconceptions about Zenith, because reading a bunch of reviews and actually reading the book, there are quite a few things that are talked about but without the context of the actual book. So let's debunk some of those myths. Call me Mythbusters. That one line that everyone seems to quote, "Hope is a raging asshole." Oh my gosh, what does it mean? It doesn't make sense. Hope, what? You can't be an asshole, that's a concept. When a book gets a lot of like hate on something, people will usually bring out one quote from the book that symbolizes how bad the writing is, which in the context of Zenith is a throwaway line that is supposed to be meant as a joke. It's a line between Andy's crew as they're waiting for a ship to arrive, and it's supposed to be funny, y'all. Like, the next line after it is like, "Oh, me and my sarcastic soul." It's not supposed to make sense, but it's quite shocking how often this line gets thrown around as an example of bad writing. It reminds me when I first read Twilight and I first read the line, "You dazzle me," and everyone making fun of it, saying, "Ugh, vampires, you dazzle me, ugh, so bad, so cheesy," but within the context of Twilight, it's an inside joke between Edward and Bella. Next is Andy as a character. Now, I do like what the authors tried to do with Andy as a character. I just wish it was more clean cut. Let me explain. So Andy is also double known as the Bloody Baroness, this insane ruler, as known as almost a serial killer in this rich sci-fi world, and she comes with a pretty interesting backstory. So what happens with Andy is that she went on a mission with a friend, and Andy was supposed to die at the end, but it kind of flip-flops and her friend dies and she's the one that ultimately survives, and she understands the complexities of grief. She understands what it's like to lose somebody and to never see them again. And so when she's forced to become this space pirate, she has to create an alter ego, which makes her able to kill people. The Bloody Baroness is a mask that she wears and plays a character whenever she goes on a mission. If you don't understand that she's playing a character as the Bloody Baroness, it is gonna seem like it's weird characterization of having her be this kick-butt space pirate and then crying about the people she killed. But she is genuinely remorseful and she doesn't want to kill people, and that's what makes her interesting. I do agree with is if a lot of people do not understand what you're doing with the character, it probably needed to be executed better. But it's not a character inconsistency, it's just a poorly done characterization. Look at that. Look at these literary terms. You get it? You feel me? Cool. Moving on. The PTSD rep. Now, this is the most valid criticism I think people have for Zenith. It needs a lot of work. It needs to be more research, and interviews probably should have been conducted to make sure that they were representing it accurately. It's hot and it's cold, it turns off and it's on, and if you boil it down, it's usually only there to deliver angsty lines, which is bad. And I get that and why it would upset people, because it's not done well. Next criticism is the world building is underdeveloped. Yes, but that's okay. Zenith does the thing where it stops everything and explains in the moment everything you need to know, which can be kind of lazy. Sarah J. Maas does the same thing, and it kind of disrupts the structure and the flow of the story. It did seem floppy at times. I will say the world building is probably on par with like 2012 dystopian era YA. It feels about the same amount of world building as Shatter Me, if that can give you an indicator of where it's at. The next controversy is the rape scene, which is probably one of the most controversial aspects of this book. And I'm gonna give you a spoiler warning because I'm about to spoil one aspect of the final act. So the background on the topic is the antagonist, mom gets raped. It's not depicted on page, it's explained in an info dump. His mom was raped by the Overlord character in the story that is in charge of Andy, our main protagonist. And yes, while it should have been explained more than in exposition reveal, I think we do need to move past the notion that by just including a rape scene is inherently problematic. This was trying to explain the connection between two characters. Nevernight does the same thing, and I don't hear anyone talking about it. I can agree it needed to be explained more, and the character's mom, who was sexually assaulted, needed to be able to deal with their emotions. But at the end of the day, the victim is not a character. We don't get their perspective. And it's hard to deep dive into the topic when we're not in that person's mind. It's hard. It's definitely needed to be workshopped a little more. But at the end of the day, it was a soap opera twist to explain a connection. And for me, calling that problematic is a stretch. And like I've stated before, I think the most common critique is, oh, she's a professional reviewer, she should have known better. And to that I say, no, being a reviewer does not make you a good writer. I should know, because I can in fact paint and I cannot sculpt for the life of me. They're both skills that need to be worked on. And for a first attempt that took 6 weeks, I think she did the best that she could. The last notion that I think plagued this book was the thought that Sasha only got this book deal was because she's popular, which is a weird like deja vu effect, because Zenith only got popular because of the booktube community. So it's weird because you're mad at the thing that you helped endorse. At the end of the day, publishing is a business. It follows a business model to a T. And if it sees something go straight to #1 in ebooks, it's probably going to get in contact with them because it works in that business model and looks at buying things as a risk. And when Sasha, who already has a built-in audience who will buy her books, it's a no-risk purchase. So of course they're going to look into it and hopefully publish it. Sure, it deserves criticism, just I don't think the burning, passionate hate that it got. Because guys, it's just a subpar sci-fi novel. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that deep, truly. And while it's true, Zenith is not the best, but it's also not the worst. It deserved criticism, just not the world-ending dumpster fire rant reviews that it got. I think it was good for me to take a step back and acknowledge the flaws of this book, but also see the good ideas behind it. I think the lessons we can take away from this book is don't review bomb books. Execution is key, and sometimes things are subpar, and that's okay. Anywho, that's all I have to really say about Zenith, but thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Keep reading and all that jazz. My thing is but it's quite shocking how often this line gets thrown around as an example. When the concept of words, 20 other million white rappers emerge. The chosen one's trope. Oh, the chosen one trope.